Welcome to Pimpy's Investment Chat, where we keep investment talk simple. And here's your host, Pimpy.
What is going on out there, peeps? So let's get back to Iraq. I see it, there is a whole new wave of YouTubers that are speaking about the dinar. And every one of them, once again, like we do every time there's a new batch of them, are spreading the same false stories and false hope that people fell trapped to when you first get on YouTube. I think it's interesting that you see them quoting or reading articles from people like Nick and Judy, of all people. This is who their credible source is. Well, if they're at this long enough, they'll start to figure out that when it comes to a lot of the people that write these articles about the dinar and those who create YouTube videos about the dinar, who is full of crap and who's not. Look, it's not about, oh, you're being negative versus people are being positive. It's one thing to be positive. It's another to just flat out lie, fabricate content just so you can get a lot of views, just so you could be popular with people, just so you could charge them money. And then it's a whole other thing just to be a person who's brutally honest, doing your best to try to educate people on what it is we need to look for before we see a real change in the rate. Honesty and truth is not always the most popular path to take. So people keep sending me links to a lady who just recently started doing YouTubes. She's taking the same path that a lot of these other people do. They start incorporating God in their conversation. Just one thing if I thought they were sincere, but I watched a couple of videos now. You can see that she's figured out that if people keep saying God's given her this information, God told her that this is what's going to happen, then it tends to pick you up some views, pick you up some subscribers. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that she doesn't talk to God. I don't know if she does or don't. That's on her. But I'm just saying, though, when people start using their relationship with God to try to push the dinar, no, that doesn't seem right to me at all. And then when I heard her list of sources, I just shook my head. I go, here's another one. Definitely a whole new wave of people speaking about the Iraqi dinar now on YouTube. So it's entertaining, but at the same time, it's pretty scary. I think a lot of subscribers that's been dealing with this whole dinar thing for years has figured out who's full of crap and who's not. I mean, I went through the same thing. You know, you listen to these people and you're hoping what they're saying is right. You're hoping that they do have some magical contact and that they got some kind of intel, that there's numbers on the back screens and there's 1-800 numbers and the redemption centers and somebody's got magic codes. You're like, yes, you're cheering it on because you want it to be correct, only to find out that it's full of crap. Anyways, let's get back to Iraq because we're going to cover a article that lays out the new plan of the new government and some interesting things about this new government that I'm a little concerned about. I'll run it past you and get your opinion. Before we get started, though, do me a favor and hit the thumbs up button. If you're not a subscriber, please do so, because when you do, it helps out the channel, and I certainly do appreciate it. If you're thinking about buying gold and silver, go to our friends over at Money Metals Exchange. The link is down below in the description. If you're a first-time buyer and you spend more than $100, use promo code Pimpy, P-I-M-P-Y, and you will get a free half ounce of silver. There are a handful of articles that really have caught my attention. One is that the King of England, Charles, is reaching out saying that he has plans with Iraq. And then you see the Biden administration coming straight out and saying that they are going to be working on Iraq's agenda. Why are these leaders so involved with what's going on in Iraq? Seriously, they literally say this is our agenda for Iraq. They don't say, we want to help Iraq's agenda for Iraq. They really just come out and say, this is our agenda for Iraq. And that they have big plans for Iraq. They seem to be embracing this new government that's coming forward. We know that King Charles is a huge part of the World Economic Forum's New World Order agenda. You could just go to the website and see he's all over it. So that shouldn't be surprising that he's pushing this agenda. And the fact that he's teaming up with Biden to do something in Iraq is pretty scary. If I was Iraqi people, I'd be insisting to this new government that you don't fall into the footsteps of these countries like ours that's trying to head into this new world order trap. It's not a good thing for your people at all. All right, let's get started. It says Iraq's new government outlines priorities. The Iraqi Prime Minister Sudani faces challenges and constituencies to move his agenda. So, the Iraq Parliament approved the new government of Sudani back on October 27th as a 29-page ministerial program put forth by Sudani was put to vote and received more than 250 of the 329 parliamentary votes. Sudani presented his approach as far as the work of ministries is concerned and did not introduce any major change in the general policies drawn by the ministerial program of his predecessor, Al-Kadhimi. It doesn't look like Sudani wants to make much changes and he wants to follow the reform. That's what it appears like. If you couple up with that and the fact that they're not finding the place for Maliki, you have to sit back and wonder, what the heck is really going on? Now, this might have more to do with Sudani's relationship they're trying to develop with the United States. Maybe they're the ones insisting that Maliki does not get back in power. And the fact that he's continuing Al-Kadhimi's reform, it appears like, it says volumes about al-Sundani and his new government. It's very interesting to watch this play out. This is despite the fact that over the past couple of months, Sudani's harshly criticized Kadhimi and his political team over policies related to foreign relations and regional and international cooperation, among other issues. Well, that's the thing about politics. You always slam the opponent until you win office, and then you're all brotherly and lovely in the whole 9 yards. Sudani has a strong card enabling him to roll out his program, namely the broad parliamentary cover that his government enjoys, as is a fruit of the state administration coalition formed by the Coordinated Framework, which is a political alliance between the Shiite groups and military parties loyal to Iran with about 140 parliamentary seats. So is Sudani actually doing the bidding of Iran? I don't think so. He's already came out and made a pretty bold statement about he likes the relationship that has been built between Iran and Iraq, but they are not to meddle in Iraq business. Again, it's one thing to say it, it's another to actually put it into play. However, it eventually adopted a quota approach amongst the participating parties, which could end up blocking any major initiatives. So Sudani has up to 1 year to make an impression if he's actually going to go through with early elections. Yeah, 1 year, that's what he's got. And the smart move would be, in my opinion, to follow Al-Kadhimi's reforms. He obviously was doing something right. It's just unfortunately that the political rivals of Al-Kadhimi happen to be the Coordinating Framework, people which he was investigating, okay? The most important point of Sudani's ministerial program is the emphasis on holding early elections within a year and the amendment of the parliamentary election laws within 3 months, thereby conveying a positive message to the leaders of the Sodarist movement, who has withdrawn from political process. Again, it's interesting that al-Sundani seems to be making sure that whatever he is doing is approved by Sadr. Very interesting, because we know already in the past article through Maliki, he said they had no intentions on having an early election. He just threw everything, all the promises right out the window. In other words, Sudani's government could be another short-term government just like the previous government, which was formed with the sole aim of achieving specific goals, most notably holding early parliamentary elections. Yeah, but Al-Kadhimi did more than just hold elections. He did get a lot accomplished despite the fact that he had to jump through a lot of hurdles and did not have very much support. Not to mention, he only had 6 months worth of a budget. I have a feeling that al-Sudani is going to get a lot more support and hopefully he gets a lot more accomplished for the people of Iraq. It says accepting Sadr's demands to hold early election once again is on the one hand aimed at reassuring him that there is no intentions to exclude him, and on the other hand is aimed at reproducing the missing political balance as noted by the leader of the National Wisdom Movement, Akeem, one of the most prominent leaders of the Coordinated Framework and supporter of Sudani's. But the biggest challenge lies in how to amend the election law, especially the mechanisms of agreement on the distribution of districts, the voting county mechanism, and the election commission, which were subject to contentions in the previous elections, as the Coordinated Framework accused the previous government of managing the elections in a way that favors Sadr, who won the largest number of seats. The other thing they want to amend is to make sure that they make changes to the Constitution so that they're not stuck in a deadlock like they were this last time. Sadr currently lacks any parliamentary representation to take part in the drafting of the new election law, and he rejects any form of dialogue with a coordinated framework to begin with. If Sudani's government proceeds with drafting an election law that would deal a blow to Sadr, then Sadr could be prompted to return to the streets. That's how we're going to know how real this government is. Could this just be all fluff, or is al-Sudani the real deal? We'll know based on this election law. If he's reaching out to Sadr on the under, getting input on this election law, that says a lot about this person. But if he just goes in there and does the coordinating framework's bidding, that's just not going to be good. So right now, calmer heads seem to be prevailing, but we'll know more in the next 90 days. Sudani's anti-corruption campaign of building effective tools to fight corruption within a maximum period of 90 days from the date of the formation of the government, as he promised, is actually a double-edged sword. This is everyone's demand, both inside and outside of Iraq, and it forces Sudani to engage in a very harsh confrontation, some of which might be against his own supporters. This raises the question of whether Sudani will be ready to engage in similar confrontations at the time when he has to be very cautious towards Sadr and his currents. Of note, al-Kadhimi's government also focused on the fight against corruption as it formed a special committee in this regard. While the committee managed to make some progress, it faced great pressure, which led to its subsequent dissolution by the judiciary. Sudani's proposal in terms of creating job opportunities for the youth may collide with the complex economic reality and the need ultimately for radical reforms in Iraq, which again are in the white papers. The Iraqi economy is highly dependent on the state and its financial resources amid very little private sector contributions. Kadhimi's government had previously adopted an economic reform program dubbed the White Papers. It relied on privatization, foreign investment, as well as bigger state revenues through taxes and administrative reforms. Well, you can't tax people if they're not working. That was one of the problems that al-Kadhimi had, is getting people off unemployment. However, the program faces widespread opposition on the part of the pro-Sudani political team. So if Sudani opts for radical solutions similar to the white paper proposals, he could lose the support of his political team in parliament. Now remember, we saw an article in which people were assuring the world that al-Sudani, who was once the protege of Maliki, has since parted ways with him and became his own person. We're going to find out if that's true real soon. It says, and if he turns towards temporary solutions similar to the solutions of the governments that preceded al-Kadhimi, chief among them job appointments and skills, then he will further complicate the economic problems facing Iraq and may lose the support of the international financial organizations such as the World Bank. Not that that's a big loss. Anytime you can shed away the World Bank and IMF, it's a good thing. Of note, the public sector is already grappling with inflation and stagnation, and it needs restructuring through cooperation and exchange with private sectors. In terms of service, securing the necessary amount of electricity for the 2023 summer season is the biggest challenge Sudani has to meet. I remember al-Kadhimi had Jordan, I believe, come in and start building more of the huge generators, but then ISIS on the outskirts was blowing them up. So hopefully Sudani has a lot more success with doing this. It says electricity production largely depends on the import of Iranian gas and the plans and projects launched by the previous government, including setting up electricity connections with Saudi Arabia, the Gulf, Jordan, and Egypt, and solar energy projects and gas extraction faced strong opposition from pro-Sudani political teams. Yeah, if they can't get their mitts in there and figure out how to make money off it, they're not interested. Not to mention, if they do put something together with Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Egypt, that means they relied less and less on Iran. And this pretty much is how Iran's making their money, is through Iraq. Goes on to say, which deem this to be an influence of the West and Arab countries that do not get along with the pro-Iranian axis in the region. At the level of foreign relations, Sudani is likely to have a less tension relationship with Iran. An open question is whether he can expand on al-Kadhimi's progress in deepening ties with Egypt, Jordan, and the GCC. Well, like most elections, everybody talks a good talk, but not very many people could walk the walk. I'm still impressed with the fact that they are not interested in making Maliki the vice president. I'm not sure if they're just going to shut him out altogether. That remains to be seen. And it appears in this article that Sudani does not plan on changing path away from the white papers, but instead continue to follow down that path. So let's keep our fingers crossed and see how everything works out. Anyways, you guys, let me know what you think. Leave your comments down below, and I look forward to checking them out, and I'll get back at you later. I'm out.